Steph close game late in the third, and then you guys really stalled on the offensive end. What did you see that they were doing or that you guys were not doing well enough to keep up and score in that stretch?
Yeah, I mean, I thought we got a lot of good shots.
The lights inside Michelob Ultra Arena did what they always do on a playoff night in Las Vegas. They burned hotter, brighter, almost daring opponents to shrink. The defending champion Aces had not lost on this floor since early August. A streak that felt less like a statistical note and more like a proclamation of sovereignty. This was their territory, their home, their stage. Teams came here to be tested, and more often than not, to be broken. But on this night, something different happened. The Indiana Fever walked into the storm and refused to bow. When Stephanie White sat down at the podium afterward, her voice carried equal parts exhaustion and pride. A coach who had seen every corner of the league, from championship highs as a player to rebuilding lows as a coach, understood what it meant to walk into Vegas and take a game that wasn't supposed to belong to them. "I feel good," she said simply, as if understatement was the only safe way to begin unpacking what had just happened. "Our group has seen it all. We wanted to come in and be the aggressor right away, to make sure that we were dictating on the defensive end and dictating from a pace standpoint. They're champions for a reason. We knew they were going to make runs. They made a big one in the third, and we responded with a big one. I'm just proud of our team. It's one game. It's a long series. But to come in here and be able to steal this one was big for us." Her words were measured, but the emotion beneath them was not. The Fever had arrived at a moment that was both fragile and monumental. Fragile, because playoff series are long and punishing, with one game rarely defining an outcome. Monumental, because in the history of the franchise's last decade, nights like this had been scarce. Indiana had been written off more times than remembered. Their core players had been doubted, their culture questioned. And yet, here they were, against the defending champions, playing not like guests, but like challengers unafraid of the crown. Making life hard for the best in the world, the questions turned quickly to the defensive effort, particularly the assignment no team in basketball enjoys: guarding Aya Wilson. 4 years now, Wilson has been the league's lodestar, the player who bends scouting reports and reshapes defenses just by stepping onto the floor. Limiting her, truly limiting her, is nearly impossible. Brianna Turner, who has built her career on the thankless craft of defense, spoke with the clarity of someone who understands the job description. "She's the MVP," Turner said. "She's like the best player in the world at the moment. We just tried to make all her buckets tough. We knew we weren't going to stop her completely, but we wanted to make sure that every shot had a hand in her face or she was still in contact. Just trying to make every bucket as hard as possible and not give her any easy ones." There was no bravado in her tone. No player in this league talks about shutting Aya Wilson down. That's a fool's errand. What Turner described was more subtle, but no less vital. A defensive commitment to friction. Every drive, every post-up, every jumper would carry weight, resistance, annoyance. Wilson would get hers. She always does, but she would feel Indiana with every move. White added her own layer of tactical clarity, making sure that we were disciplined everywhere else. We knew we needed to limit their three-point makes. We knew we needed to limit their free throws. And we knew we needed to force them to play individually. We can't let them ping the ball around. They're too good. I thought our attention to detail, for the most part, was really good. It was a coach's translation of what Turner had just said. Against a team like the Aces, stopping the first option is almost impossible. But if you prevent the avalanche, the chain reaction of open threes, quick ball movement, and trips to the line, you give yourself a chance. On this night, Indiana's discipline carved out that chance, holding on when the storm hit. If there was a moment when Indiana's resolve could have fractured, it came midway through the third quarter. The Aces, fueled by their crowd and their history of dominance, erased what had once looked like a comfortable Fever lead. The gap shrunk to 3. The arena swelled with noise, the kind that doesn't just cheer but suffocates. Stephanie White called timeout. Her recollection of that huddle wasn't of fiery speeches or Hollywood-style inspiration. It was about steadiness. "I don't remember exactly," she admitted afterward, "but something along the lines of just for our team to understand that they've been champions for a reason. We had to expect that they were going to make a run. They're a great team. They've been playing some of the best basketball we've seen in our league. So, we just had to regroup. We had to get back to basics. A lot of that run was off our turnovers, so we needed to take care of the ball. We've been through the ebbs and flows throughout the course of the season. We just had to regroup and create a run of our own." It was the antithesis of panic. The Fever didn't need to reinvent themselves in that huddle. They needed to remember who they were. That, too, is a form of maturity, one that Indiana had not always possessed in recent years. The head of the snake as reporters shifted focus. One name kept surfacing: Kelsey Mitchell. She had been a constant for Indiana through years of turbulence. A scorer whose talent was undeniable, but whose presence had not always been enough to change outcomes. This season, though, and particularly this night, felt different. Mitchell wasn't just scoring. She was leading, orchestrating, embodying resilience. "Kelsey's just a tough shot maker," White said, her admiration clear. "She's always in constant motion. She's fast as all get out. Probably the fastest player in the league with the ball in her hands. And she has to work incredibly hard for every shot she gets. So for her to do what she does at the efficiency she does it with is pretty incredible. There have been multiple times this season where she's put us on her back and carried us. And through that, she's continued to lead and pour into everybody else. You see days like today where we get production from multiple people. That's what it's going to take for us to be successful. But Kelsey is definitely the head of the snake for us. She's a tough shot maker. I was really pleased with the way she distributed the shots she got. The phrase head of the snake lingers because it carries a dual weight. The Fever's win in Las Vegas was more than just a number in the series tally. It was a reclamation of identity. The kind of game that reminds a team, a city, and even a league that the postseason is as much about heart as it is about schemes. After Odyssey Sims spoke, there was a brief pause at the podium. For a moment, the room felt suspended. Reporters scribbling, cameras clicking, but no voices filling the air. Then Kelsey Mitchell leaned forward, resting her arms on the table, and began to speak with a frankness that has defined her career. Mitchell's burden, Mitchell's fire for years, Mitchell's brilliance had been both undeniable and, paradoxically, underappreciated. Her scoring touch was the kind that could change games in seconds. Yet she'd too often been cast as a lone star trapped on a team in perpetual rebuild. Now, in these playoffs, she stood on a stage where every bucket mattered, every drive was magnified. "I just want to be steady," she said, her voice softer than her game, but no less intense. "My teammates trust me. Coach trusts me. So, when the game gets tight, I just try to keep composure, to make sure we're executing, to make sure I'm putting pressure where it needs to be. But more than anything, I just try to lead by example. If I go hard, everybody else goes hard." Her words carried the fatigue of someone who's had to shoulder responsibility not just for scoring, but for culture. Mitchell had lived the lean years in Indiana, when playoff basketball was more dream than reality, when losses piled high enough to bury optimism. And yet, she stayed. She didn't chase brighter lights, didn't push her way into easier opportunities. She chose the grind. That choice was bearing fruit. Against Las Vegas, every pull-up jumper felt like a statement. Every split-second burst into the lane, a refusal to surrender. Coach White, reflecting again later, put it plainly: she's the head of the snake. And what I love is she's not just carrying the scoring load. She's carrying belief. That's harder than anything else. Brianna Turner. The defenders creed while Mitchell and Sims drew headlines for their scoring. The Fever's win had a backbone: Brianna Turner's defense. Turner's stat line wouldn't leap off the page to a casual reader. A handful of points, a few rebounds, a couple of blocks. But box scores rarely tell the truth about players like her. The truth was found in every possession where Aya Wilson had to fight through contact, in every contested jumper that fell just short, in the subtle rerouting of angles that kept Vegas from flowing freely. For Turner, defense wasn't just a job. It was a creed. "I've never cared about the spotlight," she explained post-game, her tone steady, her eyes unwavering. "I care about making the play that keeps us alive. Sometimes it's a block. Sometimes it's a rebound. Sometimes it's just being in the right place so somebody else can get the stop. That's the work. That's what I take pride in." The Fever had been searching for that kind of identity, one rooted in effort and sacrifice, for years. Turner's presence provided it. And against Vegas, it mattered more than ever. "You need players like Breezy," White said, using Turner's nickname, "because you can't beat a team like this by outscoring them alone. You beat them by disrupting their rhythm." She did that, over and over. Odyssey's redemption arc for Odyssey Sims. The journey to this night was as much personal as professional. Her career had been marked by flashes of brilliance and stretches of doubt. She'd been an all-star once, a starter, a go-to guard. But she'd also been traded, cut, overlooked. This version of Sims, the one who attacked Vegas in waves, who carried herself with unflinching belief, was not the product of luck. It was survival. "I've been through a lot in this league," Sims said quietly when asked about her resurgence. "Ups and downs. Nights where you question yourself. Nights where people question if you've still got it. But the one thing I've always had is fight. And tonight, that's all I wanted to show. Fight." Her drives to the basket weren't just basketball plays. They were declarations. At 32, she wasn't chasing the future anymore. She was seizing the now. And in a locker room filled with younger players, her presence was a reminder. Careers are finite, windows are short, and urgency is everything. "Kelsey leads us with her fire," White said. "But Odyssey, she sets a tone too. She's fearless. That rubs off. You can't coach that." The bench that believed it would have been easy to overlook Indiana's bench contributions, but White didn't let it slide. In playoff basketball, rotations tighten and trust narrows. But in Game 1, when Vegas threatened to overwhelm, it was Indiana's depth that held the line. Lexi Hull chased shooters relentlessly. Aaliyah Boston, though battling foul trouble, anchored possessions with a poise beyond her years. Victoria Saxton, limited minutes though they were, carved out space and delivered energy. "These are the pieces people don't always talk about," White said. "But they're the reason you win. Everybody sees the points, but I see the deflections, the closeouts, the box-outs. That's winning basketball." For a franchise that had spent years with rosters too thin to withstand elite opponents, the collective mattered. On this night, it wasn't just stars shining. It was a roster refusing to crack. The aces factor, of course. Part of the story in Vegas is always the aces. Their dominance had made them more than champions. They were the standard. Every loss felt shocking. Every opponent's success framed as an upset. Becky Hammon, their coach, didn't mince words afterward. "They beat us tonight," she said flatly. "We didn't execute. We didn't defend the way we needed to. Credit to them. They came in here and took it. But we'll respond." That response was inevitable. The aces rarely stumble twice in a row, which is why Indiana's win carried so much weight. They hadn't just stolen a game. They'd rattled the most confident team in basketball. They had made Vegas look human. And in doing so, they'd planted a seed, doubt, however small, in the defending champion's armor. The meaning of one win for Indiana. The message after the game was consistent. Humility. "It's one game," White repeated. We're proud, but we know this is just the start. A series is long. There's no celebrating in this moment. There's only preparing for the next one. Yet beneath that humility was something undeniable. Hope. The Fever had lived too many seasons where playoff basketball wasn't even part of the vocabulary. They'd endured being written off as irrelevant, enduring ridicule from pundits, criticism from fans, skepticism from the league at large. Now, in the glow of a win in Vegas, they weren't just survivors. They were contenders. Closing the night as the press conference wound down, Mitchell leaned back in her chair, exhaled, and allowed herself a small smile. Sims clasped her hands as if already rehearsing the battles still to come. Turner sat calm, almost serene, like a defender who knows tomorrow will bring another fight. And Stephanie White, who had guided this group through turbulence and into belief, closed the night with the simplest of summaries. This is what growth looks like. This is what happens when you stay together through the storms. We've still got work to do, but tonight, we showed what we're capable of. The microphones shut off. The cameras blinked red.